One of the favorites with visitors here at our studio gardens are the annuals that we have from year to year, especially some of the border plants here beside our barn. And this year we chose a color scheme of using purple contrasting foliage and really not any flowering plants, just plants that have attractive foliage. And in our largest bed here, we chose to use Joseph's coat, and we've used it here at the studio gardens before and we've been real pleased with it. And really, there are so many cultivars of Joseph's coat anymore, it's tough to give you really a common name or a cultivar. But within this bed, we do have two different types of foliage, shapes, and color. Right here in the very center, we have one that has a little bit thicker leaf with some more purple color to it, where all of the adjoining Joseph's coat has a pinkish cast into it, making it a little bit more variegated. Now, if you recall, we had some violas and tulips in this bed, and we just let them die down naturally. And with the cool, moist spring that we had, the violas lasted long enough to hide the tulips, so we didn't even pull them out this year. So we planted these a little bit later, and with the cool, moist weather, it's taken them a little bit longer to get established and kick in with their growth. And that's been true of most of our annuals all over the studio gardens. But we're real pleased with the progress, and as it gets hotter in the summer, if we'll keep water on them, they'll continue to do well. Eventually they'll fill in, and we may have to do a little bit of shearing on them. So again, this one was Joseph's coat. One thing I want to point out too is in another bed we have some yellow variegated types. Now when we initially planted them, both of them were yellow variegated, but as they've grown out through the summer, one has kept its yellow appearance and the other one has turned practically green on us. So again, you'll see there's a lot of color and variation in the leaf textures. So when you check your garden centers, there's no telling what you'll find. And sometimes Joseph's coat's even labeled differently. So you want to check for that genus name in particular, which is Alternanthera. And again, we'll have that on the screen for you and spell it. But again, check your garden centers to see just what kind of selection there is. Now, one of the other ones that we planted here next to our barn is one that you've probably seen more as a pot plant. It's called polka dot plant, is a common name, or Hypoestes is a genus. Now when we planted this one, we had two different colors, but it's kind of hard to detect those now. They come in a pink color, a crimson, or a red color, and also white. And the foliage is green with a splash of the color, whichever you choose, either the pink, white, or crimson. Now, in a container situation in greenhouses, they spray them and try to keep them a little bit shorter. Ours have really stretched, and a lot of times the color will even fade out, so they're not quite as attractive. The new growth is usually a little bit darker, and then the older growth greens up a little bit more. But we bordered ours with one of the colors, the darker color, with the pink in the center, and again with the sunlight they're starting to fade, and it's hard to distinguish between the two. And I think we've cut these back several times, and they're still starting to get away from us with the height. But it's one that a lot of people prefer to grow in partial shade, and we have it here in full sun, and it still seems to be doing okay. Now, as the summer goes on, I'm not sure how it will do with the heat, but so far we've been real pleased with it. And again, it's known for its attractive foliage. And that was polka dot plant, sometimes referred to as splash plant or Hypoestes. Now the other one here on the end is one that we grew last year too as a border plant in one of our beds, and it's the purple waffle plant, or Hemagraphis is the genus. And again, it does have some small inconspicuous white flowers, but it's known for its purple and green contrast of the foliage, and the leaf is also a crinkled color. It's a nice little border plant. It's very low growing. We have it in an area where the soil dries out, so we really have to keep the water to it. But it spreads nicely, and it doesn't take a lot of trimming or maintenance, so we've been real pleased with it, using it this year in complete mass versus just a few plants bordering a bed. Now I'd like to take you over to another one of the favorite beds and show you some more bordering annuals. Well, the center bed here at our studio gardens also follows the purplish color as far as a planting scheme. And the plant that we have as our bordering plant actually is not new to those of you who've been watching Oklahoma Gardening. Last year we grew this plant in our mailbox planter over where we have some of our literature, and it did real nicely, and that's usually how most people see it, as a hanging basket. It's called Blue Days, and it's Evolvulus is the genus, and it really is one of the few annual bedding plants that truly has a bluish color flower. Now, we've grown it as a bedding plant. I've also noticed this year in a lot of the garden centers it's very easy to find. We have it in full sun, but what we've noticed is on cloudy days like today, it will bloom a little bit longer, but on sunny, bright days it usually blooms either in the early morning or in the afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. So I think it's telling us that it prefers partial shade, but it does really nice for us here in full sun. Now behind it, really it's more of a purplish color flower. This is a purple lantana. This particular one is very prostrate in its growth. It really stays low to the ground compared to most of the other cultivars that you'll see out on the market. And again, it's just purple lantana. Now the color contrast, in some people's opinion, with the blue and purple might say that it clashes a little bit, but we've really had a lot of nice comments on it, especially when we planted a little bit taller plant back here for some height in the back of our bed. Now this is purple fountain grass. And there's a heavy dew this morning, so it's even cascading more than it normally does. The thing about this plant, it's really grown as an annual here in Oklahoma, where down in South Texas and in Florida, in different climatic zones, it will grow as a perennial. So we put it in the same time we put in all of our bedding plants. You can see the nice purple plumes and the seed pods, and the foliage has a purple cast. So it really ties in nicely our purple scheme here. And with the cascading and the height, it does real nicely. Now it prefers full sun. We have one back in behind us here that's growing between two shrubs, and you can see it gets a little bit too much shade, so it's really not put out the plumes yet, and it's a little bit smaller. But again, this is a favorite one, and it's a nice one to grow as an annual here in Oklahoma. Now a couple of other plants that we have in our studio gardens that I want to tell you about that have the purplish marbling or color to it are called copperleaf plant or copper plant. We have a couple of different varieties or cultivars over by our compost pile, and one that is real nicely is a lace leaf, or it's a variegated color, but the margins on the leaf are kind of twisted and cut leaf, so it really gives a little different appearance than the traditional copperleaf. Now you'll also find copperleaf in another variety, sometimes sold as Dallas leaf, that has a yellow cast to it, but most of the time you'll see the purple color, and again it will give you a lot of height. Ours are probably a couple of feet, and they do nicely in hiding part of our compost pile. So if purple is your color, I think you're going to find that there's a lot of choices out on the market. These are some of our favorites this year, and we hope you've enjoyed them.